China has a population of 1.418 billion, which is the largest in the world. In fact, around 20% of the world's population lives in China. That means every fifth person walking on Earth is Chinese. But the population growth rate of China has been constantly declining. In 2018, about 15.23 million babies were born in China, which is a 2 million decrease compared to 2017. The fertility rate has dropped to 1.6 births per woman in 2018 compared to 6.4 births per woman in 1965. According to the report of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, the Chinese population will start to contract from 2030, and by 2065, the population of China will plunge down to 1.172 billion. India is expected to overtake China as the world's most populous country by 2024. The population of China was around 100 million in 1800s. During the 19th century, the Chinese population increased manifolds as a result of decreased deaths due to improved healthcare and medicines. As a result, the population of China climbed to 400 million within just 100 years. After the formation of People's Republic of China in 1949, its leaders viewed a large population as an asset. Until the 1960s, the government encouraged families to have as many children as possible because of the belief that the population growth empowered the country. The population grew from around 540 million in 1949 to 940 million in 1976. But the liabilities of a large, rapidly growing population soon became apparent. Chinese leaders soon saw rapid population growth as an obstacle to development. By 1970, citizens were encouraged to marry at later ages and have only 2 children, and in 1979, the famous one-child policy was implemented in China. The Chinese couples were only allowed to have 1 child, and the government set a maximum limit of 2 children in special circumstances. People who didn't comply were heavily fined. As part of the policy, women were required to have a contraceptive intrauterine device surgically installed after having a first child. Women who refused these procedures could lose their government employment, and their children could lose access to education or health services. As a result, the fertility rate in China continued its fall from 2.8 births per woman in 1979 to 1.5 by the mid-1990s. According to the Chinese government, 400 million births were prevented during 1979 to 2015. But soon, China started to face a new problem: the aging of its population. Due to improved healthcare, the death rate significantly decreased and the life expectancy significantly increased. This, coupled with the low fertility rate of Chinese women, created a massive problem of aging population. The family planning policy left a shrinking pool of young people left to support their aging parents and grandparents. To combat this problem, the Chinese government declared to end the birth restriction in October 2015. Under the new policy, the Chinese couples were allowed to have 2 children. In 2017, the country's total fertility rate was 1.6 children per woman, well below 2.1, which is the rate estimated to be necessary to keep the population steady. This can be attributed to several factors. Chinese people now prefer to have just a single child or no child owing to the rising cost of raising a kid. Most of the urban Chinese parents belong to the working class and generally have long working hours. This leaves them very little amount of time to take care of a child. Most of the parents don't have the time or the energy to dedicate to their kids. The cost of raising a child deters most of the couples from having another kid. This phenomenon of shrinking birth rates can be observed in a lot of developed nations like Japan, Italy, Denmark, or France. Countries which have a high fertility rate are usually less developed or poor countries, where families rely on children to help them with labor such as agricultural work, tending to livestock, or even paid work. By contrast, in the developed nations, it is parents who invest very high costs in their children. In China, younger people prefer to delay marriage and have no more than 1 child. In fact, a large amount of women marry in their 40s, which makes it difficult for them to have babies. Chinese employers frown at women who are planning to have a second baby, and doing so could mean a demotion or denial of a job. Also, real estate prices are rising, so larger families face higher housing costs. As the population of China is aging, more and more people are getting past their child conceiving age, and the reducing number of young people means even less birth rates. Another important reason behind the population shrinkage is the low amount of women in China. For every 108 men in China, there are 100 women. There are 34 million more men than women in China. This reduction in the female population is a result of people having a preference for a male baby. During the one-kid policy, most of the parents wanted to have a male child, and therefore the female fetuses were generally aborted. This led to a drastic reduction in the female population. The reduction in the female population resulted in the reduction of childbirths because in order to have a baby, you need to have a female. Today, the median age of the population in China is 37 years. By 2015, 330 million Chinese will be over the age of 65. The country's working age population has stagnated. The declining population could create a great burden on China's economy and its labor force. With fewer workers in the future, the government could struggle to pay for a population that is growing older and living longer. A decline in the working age population could also slow down consumer spending and thus have an impact on the economy in China and beyond. This is a major challenge for China, which has the second largest GDP in the world and relies incredibly on its working class population. China is facing its most precipitous decline in population in decades, setting the stage for potential demographic, economic, and even political crisis in the near future. China's aging population issue is different from that of other more developed countries like Japan because China is facing the problem of becoming gray before it becomes rich.